Ooh, is this glitchy? I hope it's not glitchy. How's everyone doing? All right, so you find coffee, I believe, somewhere there and probably there, and there's more coffee around if you need more coffee. If not, I'm trying to wake you up a little bit. All right, so today we're going to be talking about technical SEO and what that means for us as web developers. Because I'm a web developer, really. I'm not an SEO per se. I have done SEO in the past. I have been working for agencies as well as product companies, and I am working on this kind of topic now anyway. So who am I? My name is Martin Splitt. Conveniently, the Cyrillic alphabet has a letter, so you can easily transcribe that one. I am a developer advocate, so I am doing still like actual coding, but I also write a lot of documentation, and I'm also here to hopefully bring some information to you, but that's not the only thing I want to do. I'm also here to hear back from you. What are the things that are unclear in our documentation? What are the things that worry you about SEO and Google search specifically? And what can we do more of to help you build more successful websites? I work in the web ecosystem team, so that's a team that is part of the Chrome organization within Google, so I do work a lot with web technologies. I do make my own web applications and websites. I work with the teams that are building the testing tools for Google Search, for instance, as well as the teams that are building the actual search engine. As I said, I am working for the web ecosystem team at Google. I'm coming from Switzerland, Zurich specifically, which is the largest engineering office that Google has outside of the US, as far as I'm aware. Cool. So today I'd like to start with, like, what the hell is this SEO business that we are talking about anyways? What does that mean? What does SEO look like when it's done right? And where do I, as a developer, come into this thing? We're also going to look into what Googlebot, which is the search engine bot that basically visits your websites and gets them into Google search. What does that do? How does that process look like? What do I need to know as a developer on how that works, roughly? And last but not least, the majority of this presentation I'll probably spend in this challenges bit of the presentation, where we'd like to talk a little bit more about, like, what can go wrong? How can we work with when something goes wrong? How can we diagnose it, and how can we overcome the challenge that we are facing? And last but not least, I won't just disappear off, and then you'll be like, but Martin, I want more. This is a 101 talk. I only have 40 minutes. So I'll make it quick, but I'll leave you with some pointers for more information. Also, for policy reasons, I will not be publishing these slides, so please feel free to take all the pictures. I know it's recorded as well, so you'll find this video later on Twitter as well, but there's plenty of links in here that will lead you to more resources as well. Cool. So what is SEO? Well, it's search engine optimization. That's what SEO stands for. So making sure that your website does well in search engines. You want to optimize for search engines. But do you really optimize for search engines? Well, not really. You will hopefully optimize for your users and to figure out what they need. But how do you do this? Well, this process can be a little messy, like the very helpful infographics that was created by the Swiss television to explain a weather phenomenon. I still don't know how this weather phenomenon happens, but it's a pretty graphic, I guess. So if you feel like this about search engine optimization, that's why I'm here. I want this to be more clear. So let's talk a little bit about, like, what does SEO entail? Well, first things first, you need to get the content right. If you have a website that has no content or no good content, then that's not really helpful. So how does an SEO do this? How does an SEO expert deal with this? Well, you want to make sure that these people are working with business stakeholders, making sure that they understand what your business has to offer. What is it that you're doing? They also should probably work a little bit more with marketing to figure out, like, so what is it that our product can do? What is that people need? What can we provide them on our website with? Do they need, like, fundamental understanding? Are we trying to create a new market? Are we publishing a product that already kind of, like, exists in some sort of form? Our product is just better. Then we need to make sure that they understand why our product is better. Like, this is more like well, this is about the content, so this is not really technical. This is more about like copywriting, choosing the right words, and making sure that people understand what your company has to offer and why your website is the best choice for them to go to. Then on the other side, you also want to be a little more strategic, like where is this going in a couple of years? Where do we want to be? Where are we right now? Where do we want to be? How do we get there? Again, that's talking a lot with business stakeholders, that's talking with sales, that's maybe also talking again with marketing if it comes to strategic marketing decisions. But okay, blah, blah, business, sales, whatever. Martin, I'm a developer. This is a developer conference. What am I doing here? Like, this does not sound like something that I should deal with. Yes, but there's also the technical side of things. And this technical thing is where we get into, because this is what we are good at. So a good SEO will probably come to your desk every now and then and say like, hey, we need to figure this thing out. There's a problem. Our search results are not showing, or our pages are not showing up in search results, or they are showing up incorrectly, or there's like some other sort of problem that we need to address. And then you probably want to know, like, is that bullshit or is that the actual thing that we need to deal with? And a good SEO will help you identify the real important issues and will help you find information on how to resolve them. But throughout this talk, we're going to talk about how you can preempt these issues. How can you prevent this from happening? How can you make sure that your website works well for search engines so that the technical side of things is solid? Why am I saying any of this? Because what I want you to take away is SEOs, good SEOs, are on your side. They are helping your business succeed by making sure that people who need your product or who want your product are actually finding you. Because how do you find websites? You know them all by heart, or do you like look into a large catalog? Or yeah, I'm gonna bring out my web directory like and then like open it up and search for the right page. Like, yeah, that's the website I want to go to. No, you're using a search engine. You're going to some search engine and ask a question. I don't know, restaurants nearby, or I don't know, bar nearby, or I need a new, I don't know, toaster or something like that, right? Best programming language. You can enter that into a search engine and you'll find very many people online who are very angry about everything, and that's fine. But basically, search engines are a way for people to find what you're doing. If no one knows what you are doing or what your business is doing, then you're not going to have a very high chance of success. Yes, you can spend money on ads. That's great. I encourage you to do that. But nonetheless, you don't want to just bet entirely on ads. You want to make sure that you're doing like some word-of-mouth marketing. You want to do some search engine optimization, and then you have an ads campaign to like bridge the gaps. Cool. Let me say this. As developers, we tend to be like really focused on making fantastic websites. That's great. But polishing chocolate ice cream doesn't really help you, right? If your website has terrible content, no amount of technical improvement will fix that. You have to start with good content. If you believe that your website has the information that someone else needs, then you probably have good content. If you make it accessible to the user and make it so that users understand that this is good content, fantastic. Having terrible content that loads within half a second is not going to help you, because it's still chocolate ice cream loading in half a second, so that's not great. So let me give you an example. And this is a fake example, but I have seen websites like this. I have seen startups who build websites like this. I have seen enterprises build websites like this. This is what happens when marketing departments do not know what they are doing, or when developers are not speaking up if they see bullshit on their websites. Let me just call it out. It's bullshit. I am German. I was born in Germany. I live in Switzerland, but I was born in Germany. I have embraced the concept of a proper breakfast. Breakfast is a very important part of my morning. I have breakfast in the morning. That's just how my day starts. It's the most important meal of the day. That's what my mother said. So I usually eat toast, but my toaster broke down. I was not emotionally ready to say goodbye to my toaster, but that's the situation I now have to deal with. Okay, fair enough. How do I choose a good toaster? I don't know. So what toasters are out there? I don't know. So I just basically like found this website. Cool. So again, my mission is to get a toaster, to get the right toaster for me. Okay, so we have this fantastic website. Is this about toasters? Well, looking at this particular picture here, maybe it's on a toaster, but the most prominent thing here, besides the picture, is smart, simple, beautiful. Now, those are wonderful words. They sound very fancy, but what the fuck is this page about? This could be smart, simple, beautiful. That can be a bank, or a car, or a, I don't know, dog. I don't know. I don't know what this is about. Okay, fair enough. I still don't know what this is about, so let's read on. Next thing. It will disrupt your breakfast. Yolki-palki, niet. I don't want... Eta govno. I don't want my breakfast disrupted. This is the most important meal of my day. I want it quiet and peaceful. What do I get? Disruption. I don't want disruption. I know, if you are a startup, you're like, ooh, we're disrupting the market of... Fuck that. I just want a toaster that makes my bread. That's all I need. And this is just like, disrupt my breakfast? What does that mean? It means nothing. Thank you very much for spending my time on reading bullshit. We continue thermochemical food processing. Does it boil it? Does it turn it into coal? I don't know. This is weird. Why does it not say toast my bread? I don't know. What's going on here? The best invention since sliced bread? Haha, what a nice pun to add a little personality. But still, this website is bullshit. Okay, fantastic. Let's go on. Let's see what else can I get from this website. They have a philosophy. Fantastic. They have a philosophy. I don't want a philosophy. I need a toaster. They also have a hot bread X10. I have no freaking idea what that is, so I'm going to ignore that. And then, okay. Then they have a button that says, join the movement. Join the movement. I don't want to. I have a religion, thank you very much. I need a toaster. I don't want to join a movement. I don't want to join your club, thank you very much. So this website is pretty bad. Yet, this is very obviously bad now that you see it, but look at your websites and tell me that none of your landing pages where people actually enter the websites are similar. Because what you want is, this website does not tell me what it is. So many products don't tell me what they are. It's like, blurb is the new thing that everyone talks about. I'm like, cool, but what the fuck is it? Right? Tell people what your website is about. Tell people what they can do, what you have to offer in terms of product and information. So let's have a slightly adjusted version of this website. It's the same website, but it's slightly adjusted. Maybe like this website is built with, I don't know, React, and it loads in like 0.5 seconds, but it's bullshit. Same technology stack, same design, slightly different. Toasty Mac toaster face, the fastest toaster. Ah, I'm good here. I wanted a toaster, I get a toaster. Very good. I feel reassured. I feel safe. I feel at the right place. The fastest toaster will never burn your toast again, and it gets your toast, well, faster. And you should try a Toasty Mac toaster face. All right. But as I said, like, this is the first time my toaster breaks down. So I'm not sure if this is the right toaster, or if, like, I mean, I haven't learned anything about Toasty Mac toaster face at this point. So I'm not ready to make the decision. Even though they make it easy for me, they have like a call to action right up here that says, buy a toaster. So I can immediately buy one. That's great. I don't join a movement. I buy a toaster. Fantastic. But I don't know if I want this toaster. So what I could instead figure out here is how to choose a toaster, because they have that as an option. So they tell me how to choose a toaster. I don't know how to choose a toaster. Thank you very much for helping me. So even though this website meets me, or I'm finding this website at a point where I'm not ready to make a buy decision, I see that you are providing me with more information, with more data gathering options for my hunt for the perfect toaster. And if I'm figured out how to choose my toaster, next to it is a button that says Our Toasters. So Toasty Mac Toaster Face is apparently not the only option I have from this website. I can choose other options as well, and they might be the right toaster for me. So that's pretty freaking great. This is much, much more helpful. What can we learn from this? Again, if your website does not tell me what it is that you're doing, how you're doing it differently than anyone else, how I can get it, in this case, buy a freaking toaster, and more information if you are meeting me at the wrong stage of my journey, then you're not doing well. You're wasting money, because if I'm spending money on ads, people will click on the ad, come to your website and go like, I don't want to join a movement, and jump off. So like you have paid the advertiser, well, not the advertiser, the advertisement network for the impression and the click, but you haven't gotten anything out of it. Neither with search. If a search engine sees that website, it's going to be like, I don't know what this is about. It's something, I guess, but I don't know. Here, the website makes it very, very clear, even to search engines, this is a website about a toaster. Cool. Let's put it in the index for toasters so that people searching for toasters will find it. Much better experience for everyone. Cool. Now let's talk a little bit more about the technical side. That was the content side. Great. We have accomplished and established that we need to make our content good. And we have to have good content, and that's where it starts. Now let's talk about the technical bits and pieces. Don't worry, don't be afraid. You don't need safety gloves or glasses or a hard hat. This will be safe. All right, so first things first, you might end up with a website like this. So if you're using one of the many client-side rendered JavaScript frameworks like Angular, React, Vue.js, Ember, Polymer, who knows, random.js, I don't know. There's like a new framework coming out as I speak. Probably since I started this talk, there's like 10 new frameworks. But basically, you see this website, and can you tell me what this website is about? Haha, trick question. No, you cannot. Because this website doesn't really have any content, right? The content is entirely generated by JavaScript. So a lot of people are worried like, oh, but Martin, so does that mean that like my website will not show up in search because it has the content problem, right? We said like content is really important, but it's not really, there's no content here. So do I have a problem? For Google search, the answer is no. You do not have a problem, generally speaking, because what we do. So what we do is this. We start with a list of URLs. We know a bunch of URLs already. We basically put them in a long list, and then so-called crawlers, so basically like computer instances, are fetching each item from this list. So like multiple batches of URLs are being taken from the list, and then the program called a crawler, which is the traditional classical Google bot, will actually take one URL each, takes the URL, makes an HTTP request to it, and gets the response back. Once we have the response, we pass that on to the next stage. So if this was a website, then we got hopefully like a proper if this was a classical website, let's say, we get the proper HTML with all the content, right? That's an easy one. We make an HTTP GET request, we get all the content back as HTML. We can now look into it, and with the first thing that we do when processing is we basically just pass it back to the crawl queue. So now we are looking through the HTML and look for all the links in there. If we find links that have URLs, these URLs go back to the crawl queue so that the next crawler can fetch this URL. That's how we discover new websites. That's how this list keeps growing. If you publish a new website somewhere, like let's say you tweet about your new homepage, then your homepage will be on Twitter. We know Twitter. We crawl Twitter. We get the information from Twitter. Twitter gives us a bunch of HTML. We go through like, oh, there's a link to this homepage. Put it in the crawl queue. Eventually, a crawler comes, sees that page, makes a request to your homepage. If it's a classical page, then we have already established. It has links to your other pages. These links go back to the crawl page, and the cycle continues. The next thing it does is it also puts this particular response that we got into what we call the render queue. It turns out the web is quite big. So in 2016, that's the latest number I have, which is like 3 years old now. 3 years ago, Googlebot has visited or known 130 trillion URLs. That's a lot. And we don't have infinite computers. I know everyone's like, oh, the cloud is basically infinite computers. But I'm like, well, there isn't infinite computers. There's just like a lot of other people's computers. So basically, once we have the resources available, we take the HTML from that render queue, and we put it into what we call the web rendering service. The web rendering service is basically just a Chrome browser, so to speak, that renders your website. It opens your website as if you would be opening the website, downloads all the other resources, all the JavaScript, executes all the JavaScript. So this is where JavaScript is run. And basically, if you have a single-page application like a React or Angular or Vue application, you would at this point have the entire HTML content. So as we now have the entire HTML content, we can pass that back into processing, and we can again look for links. If we discover links here, we can put them back in the crawl queue, and the entire circle starts again. Now that we are sure that we have all HTML content and we know all that the website contains and all the website is about, we can put that in the index. You can think of the index as like a huge library, right? So it's like, oh, this website is about toasters, 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 toasters. This website goes in with the others. So that way we accumulate a huge amount of basically like, yeah, it's like dictionaries. We have like keywords or terms, and then we have websites that contain these or are about these terms. So if you are asking us about a toaster, we have like a lot of websites that we can pick from. Now the problem is if you look at search results, we have to bring them in some order, right? And we want to make sure that the result that sort of, fulfills your intention, your question as much as possible, needs to be on the top. But that's a really tricky question because it depends, for instance, on the question that you asked us. If you say like cheapest toaster, then a different website should be on position 1 than if you asked us for fastest toaster, because the cheapest toaster isn't necessarily the fastest toaster. So these like order depends heavily on who is searching, how are you searching, what are you searching for, right? Is this like a query as part of a larger query set, or is this like one specific query coming from Belarus versus, like if you are asking for restaurants, a restaurant in Zurich is not particularly helpful for you. You might want a restaurant in Minsk right now, because then you can visit it with like a short cab ride probably, or ride with a metro. So like we are trying to figure out what works here. And this process of figuring out what is the potentially best search result or set of search results for the user is called ranking. We're looking at hundreds of factors to figure out how to rank for a specific query, and these factors change over time, and also like our index grows and shrinks over time, as in like websites come in, websites are removed. So like it's really, really hard to influence for a ranking. As you are web developers like me, you should worry about crawling, processing, rendering, more or less, and indexing. Ranking is very much far out of the game. It's a can of worms that I'm not willing to open. It's such a different thing. Just basically for the purpose of this talk, we're going to ignore it. All right. So you might have heard that, oh yeah, but Googlebot runs like a really old version of Chrome. Conveniently, that is no longer true. We have in May for Google I/O, we have changed our processes, and we are basically now having what we call an evergreen Googlebot. That means that within a couple of weeks of each stable Chrome release, we are updating Googlebot's renderer. So the WRS, the web rendering service that runs your JavaScript, basically runs it from a stable Chrome at all times. So you're no longer having to deal with an outdated version of our browser. We are now running the updated version of the browser. We also recently, actually, which means last week, we updated our testing tools. Our testing tools match this new version of Googlebot as well. So that's fantastic news, because that means that you can rely on us using modern technology rather than an outdated Chrome version. And yeah. Oh, actually, I have a slide because of this this happened last week. So you can test your stuff online. You can basically just use, for instance, the mobile-friendly test, plug that in, and basically like put any URL in, and you see if we are seeing your website just right. So in this case, this is like a single-page app using some JavaScript framework, but the content is showing up here, so that means that we are probably good. If you're not sure about this, you can also press on the little HTML button, and you see the source code that Googlebot uses for indexing. So that means that you can figure out what's happening inside Google search to figure out if your website would potentially work or not. That's the testing tools that we're providing. There's more links to this later, don't worry about it. The only thing that we haven't updated yet is the user agent string. So if you check your logs, you'll see that we are still pretending to be Chrome 41. That's not exactly great. We are not really running Chrome 41 anymore. We have updated since. But because a few people, actually a bunch of people, are running websites that have some certain adjustments for Googlebot, which they shouldn't have in the first place, then basically we would break these websites. We don't want to break these websites by surprise, so instead, when we launched this in May, we said, if you are still looking for Chrome 41 in the user agent, you should stop. We have said that in this particular update for the testing tools again, there will be one more blog post warning people, and then in a couple of months, hopefully we will have a user agent that will tell you the actual version of Chrome that is running, rather than this outdated information. But if you see like Chrome 41 in your logs, don't worry, that's just because we haven't updated our user agent yet. Because we have to be really careful not to break people's websites and make them fall out of search. So that means Googlebot does execute JavaScript, so applications like this are fine. We can see them, everything's good, fantastic. So no problems, my talk's over, thank you very much. No, hold on. Because actually it turns out things can go wrong sometimes, or you might not know about certain things. One of the things that you sometimes see is that people don't realize that each page, which is each individual page, not your entire website, should have a descriptive title and meta description. So this is roughly how they show up in search results, right? You have a title, and then you have some descriptive blurb, some text that describes what this website is about, right? In this case, all of the search results are showing the same title and the same description. If I'm looking for a specific recipe, if I'm saying like, oh, I remember seeing like this really good apple pie recipe on Barbara's baking blog, which one do I click on? If all of these say the same thing, I don't know which one to click on. Sometimes I read the URL because it contains what this is actually about, and then that's helpful. But make it easier for your user. Just instead of doing that, make sure that each of your pages has a title that reflects what is on the page, as well as making sure that the description matches it. So the first description would be like, oh, this is an apple pie recipe that is really easy to make and super tasty. It's fantastic for parties. The next one might be like, this cupcake recipe is blah, blah, blah. I don't know. So make sure that you do that. You can do that by using the title attribute in your HTML pages and the meta description, so like meta name description tag for the snippets. Fantastic thing. Do not leave this opportunity like unused. If you want to use this in frameworks, it's rather simple. For React, there is a component called React-Helmet. If you use Helmet in your templates, you can use your properties to populate both the title and the meta description with something that is unique to this page. So if this would be my recipe component that displays a single recipe, I would probably use like the recipe name as the title, and then something like the recipe description or intro snippet as the description snippet for Google search and other search engines as well. If you're using Angular, that is fine as well. Angular has it built in. They have a built-in title service. They have a built-in meta service. You can use both of these to actually basically build this in your Angular components. Same thing. You just call the functions, use the properties that you have available. You can do this reactively, like you can do this multiple times. That's not a problem as your component updates. We are waiting until like a reasonable amount of time has spent for the data to settle. For Vue.js, there's Vue-Meta. It's also an external package that you can implement to do the same thing. Nothing fancy here. If you want to learn more about what you can do in terms of JavaScript and SEO, we have like a guide as well as a YouTube video series. The YouTube videos are like a few minutes long each. There's 8 episodes right now. We are about to film season 2. So I highly recommend checking out our YouTube channel and subscribe and see what else we're going to put out in the future, because there's like plenty of content that we already have for developers, and there's more to come. We're always happy to share information with you all. Sometimes things go wrong, and sometimes it's small things that go wrong. That is me, and as you can see, it didn't really work. So I learned how to fly a paraglider, which is super fun. And I did it a few times successfully, and this time was different. So I thought like, oh yeah, I have figured it out. I know how to like start my paraglider, but I hold my arms the wrong way there, and that's why how do I put this? Land a little quicker than expected, and face first. Sometimes web development is like that. You think like, oh yeah, this is fine. I have done this many times before, but there's like a small difference, and that small difference has consequences that are not intended and are not the way that you would like them to be. How can you deal with that? Well, okay, let's look at a few things that happen. So what happens if we don't discover your pages? Your pages don't get visits from Googlebot. You check your server logs, Googlebot is not even seeing them. Googlebot goes to the main page, it goes to the landing page, but it doesn't come to any of the other pages. What's happening here? Well, it's time to talk about linking, because this is like most important thing for discovery. If we are not discovering your pages, then maybe there's something wrong with the way that you link your pages. And I cannot believe that I have to say this. This is 2019 last time I checked, but okay, let's go through it. This is a link. That's a good link. Why is it a good link? It uses the HTML tag, which is the tag for links, and it has an href with a URL where it goes to. Fantastic. This is good news. This is a link that just works. This is also a good link because this fantastic link still is a link. It has an href with a URL to go to. It has an on-click handler for a single-page application, need transitions and stuff. Good for them. But it's still a link and everything's fine. This is not good. I mean, A+, it's a link, but it doesn't go anywhere. Googlebot and other crawlers do not click on your stuff. We do not click. I said, we are scanning the HTML for links and take the URLs and put them in a queue, right? There's no URL we can put in a queue here. And then someone's like, well, technically, this link then should be fine because of an href, right? Yeah, except that this URL doesn't still go anywhere. It's an empty fragment, which just means like you stay where you are, and that's not really helping. So like there's nothing we would put on the queue for this one to crawl, because we don't know where this goes. Yeah, nice thinking, but still, no. It's not really a URL that we can put on the queue and an instance somewhere else can actually run this. If I would give you JavaScript : go to stuff and you type that into your browser right now, you wouldn't go somewhere. This is a problem. This does not work as you would intend it. Also, no, this is not what buttons are for. If it goes somewhere else, if it shows other content, then it's a link. If it does something on the page where you are right now, I don't know, like upload an image or like show a specific kind of timer or reset something like a timer on the page or something like that. If it's like an action that happens on the same page, that's a button, that's fine. If it is, however, going somewhere else, then it should be a link. If it's going to some completely different content, then it should be a link. No, just no. Just like this is the worst thing you can do. Accessible technologies like, or assistive technologies like screen readers would not even be able to pick this up properly. They would just like read it as text because they don't understand that this is supposed to be a link because we have a freaking link tag for that. So none of these options are good except for the very first two. So please do me a favor and just use the first two options. Do not use the others, right? These two are good. These two are boo, bad, no, no, no. Okay? Они говно. Они не работают. Да? Хорошо. Понимаешь? Да? Хорошо. Давайте. Talking about URLs. So I said like, oh yeah, this is a URL. It goes somewhere. Wait. These are traditional URLs as per the standard. We have a host, we have a path, and then we have this thing here, which is a fragment identifier. What is a fragment identifier? Well, if you have like a really long page, a fragment identifier can be used to navigate between specific parts of that page. So like a fragment identifier goes somewhere within a page. It doesn't go to different content. Until we invented single-page applications where we're like, fuck that, we are just building this thing where we use a change in the fragment to load different content. We felt bad about it as developers, so like we included this little exclamation mark, like we know, we shouldn't be doing this, but we are kind of like doing it anyway, sorry. At Google, we tried to figure out how to deal with this by creating something that we called Ajax Crawling. Developers got it wrong all the time. Lots of people got really mad about the fact that it wouldn't work the way that they expected it to work, and it was really hard for us to maintain, and it was a lot of source code, so we deprecated that years ago. Do not rely on hashes to change between different pieces of content. As in, do not use hashes for different pages. If you have separate pages that you want indexed and crawled properly, then you want to make sure that you're using proper URLs. And you can do that. There's a technology called the History API. It has been around for a bunch of years now. It works down to Internet Explorer 11, so browser support is fine. And if you have an Internet Explorer 10 customer, that is still fine, because the only thing that's going to happen is they're going to click on the link and the page is going to refresh to the new page. That's OK. If you've ever used a computer where an Internet Explorer 10 would be like the thing that you would be using, then you know that the Internet Explorer 10's JavaScript performance is terrible. Terrifyingly bad. So you do them a favor by not providing or trying to override this behavior using JavaScript. So definitely use History API because you don't want to deal with weird fragment URLs. Also, if you use the tool that we call Search Console is a free tool that allows you to see how search is doing or how your website is doing in terms of search. You might find something like, oh, a page was excluded, it's discovered but currently not indexed. That means we have queued it, we have found it, we saw, okay, yes, there is a link to it, but we haven't actually crawled it yet. We haven't come around to crawling. Why haven't we come around to crawling? Well, one reason is that probably your crawl budget is a little too low. What is crawl budget? Well, crawl budget is built up from two parts. Part one is the crawl rate. So how often can we crawl on your site? The other thing is crawl demand. How often should we crawl this particular page? Now, how does that work? Well, we are making HTTP requests, remember? And this is an interesting dilemma. We have to make a trade-off. On one hand, we want to make as many HTTP requests as possible at the same time so that we get as much of your website as quickly into our process as possible. On the other hand, we don't want to make your server die because we are overwhelming it, right? Your customers, your users should have priority. We don't want to overwhelm your server. So basically, we just make a bunch of requests and see how your server responds. In this case, it responds OK. It says like, yes, everything's good. It also has a really low response time. That's great. So that means we can maybe try a little more. So then we would try a little more, and in this case, your server starts being slow. It still responds with the page, but it starts to get slow. So if it starts to get slow, then we're like, oh, all right, so maybe we have done too much. Maybe we need to crawl less at the same time. So we'll try to not make as many connections at the same time as possible, which means we are not getting as many pages out of your website as at the same time anymore, right? We're reducing it, which means it takes us a little longer to go through all your website, which is fine. That's not a problem. It's just a fact, and that's OK. What would happen if we wouldn't slow down? What if we just kept going? Well, if we keep pushing for it, then we might at some point run into server errors. There's also another situation where you don't get slower responses, but you get server errors. It's the same thing. We're going to be like, whoops, we should probably reduce the crawl rate. We should crawl a little less. Don't worry, no hard feelings. We'll come back to it eventually. But if your server is incorrectly configured and has intermittent issues where you Googlebot gets errors every now and then or slow responses, we'll stop crawling as much. We'll crawl a little fewer. We'll calm down a little bit. And then once we see, OK, things seem to be fine, we'll try going up again. And eventually, we'll come back up. But you want to make sure that your server operations, your backend operations are rock solid and your server is responding fast and is actually not giving us errors every now and then, because we're going to consider these errors as us overwhelming your website. So please help us by having a stable backend solution. Also, we want to look at making smart decisions about which pages to crawl. We can't crawl all the pages basically every couple of minutes, right? If it's a website about jam, I mean, I don't know jam scientists, but maybe there's new revelations in the field of jam. But generally speaking, if I have a website about jam, then I only update this website every couple of weeks or months. So there's no point in us visiting every couple of minutes. So we have a tiered system. Basically, news websites would probably benefit from us going there every couple of minutes and checking for new stories. But generally speaking, those websites are the ones where we would crawl more. Other websites, we would probably crawl less. And we look at how fresh is this page. If this is a blog post from yesterday, then we would probably be oh, this might change a little bit because you might have updates. If this is a blog post from a year ago, then we might only come every couple of weeks or maybe months to check if there's something new for us to see. This has nothing to do with like site quality or like if we don't crawl your site or your pages very frequently, that doesn't mean that we don't like them. It's just a technical measure of making smart decisions on where to spend our crawling time. But generally speaking, you want to make sure that you have like fresh content, and you want to make sure that you have a server that responds quickly and positively. There's more on this beautiful blog post if you want to learn more about crawl budget. This is quite an old blog post, but it's still valid, and it has another blog post link that talks about optimizing your crawl budget as well. So if you want to find out how to optimize your crawl budget, that's the place to go to. Cool. Real quick, what happens if I have multiple websites that have the same content? I have a dog rating website, that's fantastic. Leica is currently the top-rated dog, but it might be displaced by another higher-rating dog at some point. Is there a way to help us figure out which website we should show in search results? Yes, there is, because basically what we're doing is we're crawling both, figuring out, oh, they're the same, and then we have to decide. But you can tell us which one we should pick by telling us the canonical. So if you say, like, this is the website that you should put in the index, we'll usually do that. However, this is a signal to us to do that. So sometimes we find that not very helpful, especially if you have a mistake in configuring them. So we are not always picking these canonicals. We have reasons to pick different canonicals, but generally speaking, you want to look at canonicalizing the pages that you care about the most. You can also use robots.txt to tell us not to crawl something real quick. Like, you can basically say, like, do not go in here. But the problem there is, with robots.txt, you're just saying do not crawl. So if someone links to content, we'll still see the link, and we'll still be like, we know it exists. We don't know if it is what it says it is, but it exists, so we're going to put it in the index. If you want something out of the index, you use an HTTP tag or an HTTP header to tell us that. So if your server says, like, this does not go in the index, then we'll be like, good, we won't put this in the index. So don't mix these two, because they're kind of like dangerous. Let's ignore that for a second. This is the tool where you can basically try all your different URLs. If you put a URL in, we'll see what we are seeing. We have discussed that earlier, but this is a really, really good tool. I think this should be your first stop for debugging issues, because this tool basically gives you a lot of information. It also gives you JavaScript error logs, so that's really, really helpful. If you have JavaScript errors, you can see them here. So this is what Googlebot would probably see from your website. We can crawl URL parameters, that's fine, but if you have some that do not make any difference, like this is the same page, but then we have like these parameters, but it's still the same page. So you can help us not have to deal with this by redirecting to a page that doesn't contain useless parameters. Okay? Cool. If you give us a URL, or if like someone links to a URL that doesn't exist, and we get this, this is good. This is this error page. We'll be like, oh, this is an error. We're not going to put this in the index. Unfortunately, you're telling us this is actually good content. Normally, we detect this, but sometimes we don't. If we don't detect this, then we have a bit of a problem, because if we detect this, then we're just not going to put it in the index. Everyone's going to be happy. But if we don't catch it, your search results might look like this. That's not a good experience. I'll be done in a second. Don't worry about it. To fix that, there's two possibilities. If your JavaScript has determined that this dog doesn't exist, you just redirect us to something where the server says 404, then we know that this is a 404 page. That's good. The alternative is you can use a meta no index. So like we have a meta robot somewhere. We are setting this, in this case, to no index, which means also this should not be here. And then we are removing it from the index. So those are the two ways that you can do. What you shouldn't be doing is the other way around. You shouldn't have a no index in your HTML. If your HTML has no index on all pages, and then you use JavaScript to remove that, that's a risky bet. Why is that a risky bet? So first things first, does that work? Actually, it doesn't work. Why does it not work? It doesn't work because at this stage, we are looking at the HTML. Whoops, there we go. Oh, Jesus, it's laggy. The screen is a little laggy. That makes it hard. We're actually at this stage, we're looking at your HTML. It says no index, so we're just going to abort. But JavaScript only runs down there. So we haven't actually run your JavaScript. So all your pages are now being marked no index. That's not good. Also, if you use cookies, you want to be really, really careful. So here we have one page that has a cookie pop-up. It sets a cookie, and then other pages redirect if the cookie isn't set. The problem with this is that Googlebot doesn't actually use cookies. So basically, Googlebot does not use local storage, session storage, cookies, or any other index DB or anything. You cannot persist data in Googlebot. Every page is being visited as if it would be the first page of your website. We have this and other limitations we have documented on this wonderful page. So if you go to google.gle/search.js troubleshooter, then you find this and more limitations that you want to probably avoid. If you find other things that are basically problematic, let us know. We're happily adding to this document. Not all crawlers support JavaScript. There are other search engines and crawlers that just don't run JavaScript. In this case, you have 3 options. Option 1, the best option. You use server-side rendering and hydration because that gives you user experience benefits as well. Alternatively, if it's a page that updates relatively rarely, then you can also pre-render it into HTML, or you use a workaround that we call dynamic rendering. What is dynamic rendering? Dynamic rendering fundamentally means if a crawler visits your website, you use a headless Chromium or something like Puppeteer or Phantom.js or whatever, or a paid service to render it into static HTML, and you serve static HTML to the crawler. That's dynamic rendering. You can do that. I would advise against it because basically it's just a workaround. Other search engines will eventually run JavaScript probably. It also doesn't give you a faster website for your users. That's not a good experience either. But if you really need to learn more, we have a guide and a code lab and a video on that as well. So you can learn more on Google/dynamic-rendering. Cool. So real quick, these wonderful tools are your go-to tools to test your website. I highly recommend you check them out. You do consider server-side rendering and pre-rendering because it makes your websites usually faster for your users, and it makes them work for search engines that do not run JavaScript. And last but not least, make sure that you use semantic HTML, you use proper URLs, and you use like link tags and canonicals to make sure that Google understands your pages as well as other crawlers understand your page. There's like plenty of documentation and videos, and you can ask us questions in the office hours. We also have a mailing list where you can ask JavaScript-specific questions, and we have a blog, and we're on Twitter. So you can reach us on all sorts of channels and ask us things and basically find out what's happening. And with that, I'd like to say thank you very much. If you have any questions, please find me afterwards. I think we're pretty much not having that much time for questions anymore. But yeah, I'm here. Thank you very much. I'm here tomorrow as well. Spasiba, spasiba большое.
Okay, we can ask 2 questions. Let's decide it's 2, okay? One more, only one, okay? One and one more else, okay?
I'm around. You can ask me questions later.
Yeah, I actually have 2, but the second one will go off scene. So, yeah, first question is about dark SEO. I don't know how it's called in English, dark SEO. Do you know what is it?
Probably you mean like black hat SEO, like bad practices?
Probably, yeah. What if we serve something specifically to crawler? How Google detects it, and what will happen?
Well, if you use black hat SEO, so as in like if you do bad things and try to game the system, we will find it out. I'm not going to explain how for the obvious reasons, because it's basically a game of cat and mouse. We will detect it eventually. Like you might see short-term benefits, but you will see long-term negative effects. We can give you a manual action, which means that your page will drop out of rankings. We can actually remove you from the index if you really misabuse our systems. And generally speaking, users will not be very happy in the end. So if you're engaging in these techniques, that's a bad idea, generally speaking.
Okay, thank you. One more question, please. Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Hi.
Thanks for the talk. The only question I have is, do you have some kind of hints?
Do I have some kind of, excuse me, what?
Hints, pro tips of how should you deal content which is lazy loaded on the page in order to crawl it
How
properly.
can we, like there's so much noise coming from the sides, it's really hard, like, sorry.
Lazy loading.
Lazy loading, fantastic question. We actually have a guide. So if you go to developers.google.com/search, and click on the guide section, there is a guide for lazy loading. But generally speaking, the intersection observer API is a pretty good idea. You can also wrap your images in no script tags, because if there's images and no script tags, we are pulling these as well. Alternatively, you can also use the new lazy loading attributes, so like image load equals lazy. That also works with search engines in general. All right.